to the divine appearance of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Last night we discussed something about the sannyas of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, by which he gives himself to us. Jaktvasudus Jajusuritzita Raj Lakshmi Dharmishta Arya Vachasaya Vadaram Mayamrigam Daita Ipsitamam Bhadavat Vande Mahapurushate Charanara. At the distress of separation, Vishnu Priya gave up Lakshmi Priya, Vishnu Priya, and chased after us. This is a way in which we could talk about his appearance, if you will, in our life, with his Madhya Lila, by which he teaches us how to understand what he's about. He exhibits, personally, he demonstrates the method to the madness of madness, right? Why are we doing these things? It must be mad, and it may not be that bad. So it was a very nice discussion that we had. And today, this evening, I should say, I want to speak in another way about Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's appearing, if you will, in our life. And as I mentioned briefly this morning during our reading, it's the way in which he has come into our life that I think in many respects is kind of taken for granted. And so I want to help all of us look more deeply into the significance of this particular way in which he's come into our life and appreciate how and through whom it all happened. That is, of course, the deity, the Murti, the Vigraha of Gaur Nityananda. Gaur Nityananda ki jai. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said through the pen of Vrindavan Das Thakur that he would appear in the world, of course, as he was, and continue on through Nam and Vigraha. Vigraha means the deity. So what does he mean by that? You have to understand it was quite a task. Nana Shastra Vichara Naikanipuno Sadharma Samstapako Lokanam Hita Karino Tibuvanema Nyosharanyaka. With compassionate hearts for all the people. The Swamis, they under the direction of Mahaprabhu Rupasnata in particular, they gathered so much scriptural evidence. They did what Vyasa Muni did under the direction of Narada, that resulted in the manifestation of Srimad Bhagavatam. He took the Bhagavad Purana and redid it after being advised by Narada to make it clear, in certain terms, what is the efficacy of bhakti compared to jnana, karma, yoga, other paths, and so forth. This is the excellence of Bhagavatam, said in the text itself to have been composed in his maturity, and the history was given there, right? Chastised by Vyasa. Everything you've written is a waste of time because you haven't sufficiently emphasized bhakti, by which karma has efficacy, by which jnana and yoga have efficacy in terms of the goals that they are in pursuit of. It means within the Varnashram system, for example, which is the karma marg, the pravritti marg, the path of acquisition, the path appropriate for those who feel, be careful now, that my life will be improved by getting things. We're not supposed to be like that, of that disposition. This is Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's mission is in one sense the nivritti marg, even though it is about acquiring something meaningful, something enduring, something lasting. Love of God, sadhu sangha, association with people who will endure, because what they're involved in, what they're preoccupied with, is of an eternal nature. So I just make this as an aside. We speak about the nivritti marg because nivritti marg means the path of giving up. There's an aspect of giving up within bhakti that allows us to call it such. If we only have two to talk about, pravritti, nivritti. It's not about the a path about acquiring things. It's about letting go of things. But the way to let go is to hold on to something else. Hold on to sadhusanga, to become asakti, to become attached to Bhagavan. We advance by attachment, right? Not to things. And that attachment makes it easy to give up things that are you can't keep anyway, right? Just as an aside. So the karma marg, then the goal is to acquire, to improve, material improvement. It's kind of an oxymoron. But this is how the good people think. Good people. So we don't want to be classified among the good people only, or the bad people, but otherworldly altogether, right? But anyway, in the path of Varnashram or the karma marg, because there is among all the devas and devis who are worshipped for this, that, and the other thing, governing, overseeing, as they do all aspects of the macrocosm that our body and mind are a microcosm of. For seeing, we need the sun. For speaking, we need the wind, and so on and so forth. So in that, they say, especially the Hindus who converted to Christianity, they've got 33 million gods. It's crazy. I don't know. It's not so crazy. If you look at it carefully, what is being said there? It's a worshipful lifestyle from beginning to end, right? And in speaking about the gods and goddesses, one thing that Hinduism does that for example, Christianity doesn't, not to false Christianity, but in speaking about the gods and goddesses, the Hindus are speaking about the nature of the external world. What is matter? What's out there? These are the questions. What's out there and who's asking, right? The question. The objective reality and the subjective reality, the world and myself. So it's not really the subject of the Bible, the nature of what's out there. But what's out there, this is part of what the gods and goddesses, of course, are all about, kind of poetically speaking about the world, positing and experiencing the Daiva partial manifestations of the controlling capacity of the Godhead, manifest as the gods and the goddesses and so forth. And that's a whole other topic. But the point I'm making is that within the Hindu pantheon of gods and goddesses, well, Vishnu's there too. Not that well understood within the Varnashram, although Yagnavai Vishnu, of all the yagyas, really meant for Vishnu. Bhoktaram Yagatapasam, Sarvaloko Maheshwaram, Suhiram Sarvabhutanam, Gnatpamam Shantim Vichati, as Krishna says in Gita. So because there's worship of Vishnu also within the Varnashram, that's a little bit of Vaidhi Bhakti that makes the whole thing run. It becomes efficacious in terms of that which worshiping the sun, worshiping the river, the earth, and so on and so forth are meant to bring about. So karma is efficacious with a little bit of bhakti. Gyan, of course, because, well, of course, karma is governed by Rajaguna, Gyan is governed by Sattva Guna. Neither can therefore give us a transcendental result, but bhakti is governed by the Nirguna. So when we put a little bhakti in Gyan, then Gyan has efficacy to bring the practitioner to a transcendental goal. So bhakti, right? A tangent to the mainstream. We'll have to come back to that mainstream of thought, but Bhagavatam is about this mainstream of thought, bhakti. This is the main current. This is the Ganga, if you will, coming from the Himalaya, that if other tributaries meet with, they can reach their goal in the Bay of Bengal into the ocean. Jnana and karma, if they connect with bhakti, like other minor tributaries on the Himalayan range, they meet with the Ganga, they can go to the ocean. So these paths can have efficacy. So an emphasis on bhakti was given by Nar to Vyas, and the Goswamis, they followed this. They took this same principle, the same instructions, Guru Parampara of Narada to Vyas, and they amplified it. And so forth, they gathered from all the revealed scriptures, all of the virtues and underlying philosophy and theology supporting these transrational expression of bhakti, heartfelt yoga of love, in what we call bhakti shastras, right? Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, Chaitanya Charitamrita, Ujjval Nirmani, their commentaries on Bhagavatam. They're doing what Vyas did in the Bhagavatam, and to a greater extent. And out of compassion, they're doing it for all souls of the world, to give them clarity, especially in Kali Yuga. And so, of course, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, as I was saying, his Madhya Lila, his Sannyas Lila is all about this. This is very instructive groups, and often it's where he set an example. As a public figure, we can follow this way he came into our life, but also now another way. How have Gaur and Nityananda as murtis come into our life? As I said, Chaitanya Bhagavat says, that he will, his name, he will continue to be present in his name, and then also in the Vigraha. So this is the big thing. See, to sort this all out, this young boy, Vishwambar Mishra, it's one thing to say he's religious. Yeah, well, kind of. The Vaishnavas, as we said the other night, were a little upset with him in his early Leela, because he was preoccupying himself with scholarship and so forth. And he also showed himself to be a little crazy at times, did crazy things. His poor mother, Sachi. The one boy is gone to moksha, Vishwarup, and the husband has gone, and the boy is left here. Sometimes he destroys things in the house. He goes mad. You have to put some Narayan oil on his head, maybe take him to the Ayurvedic clinic. And then, okay, he becomes religious, he becomes a sadhu. But what kind of sadhu is this? All the Hindus even, what is this with this Krishna Nam chanting out loud like this in the public? We've never seen anything like this. Of course, they've never seen it. Golokera Premodhan, Harinam Sankirtan. It comes from Golok. It's exported from there. And Golok is Shrutibir Vimagyan, beyond the Upanishads. It's off the scriptural map. Unknown. I've had experience in South India. We were once at my godmother Bhakti Gaurav Shiva Maharaj's ashram, one of his ashrams, and we were installing the deity of Madhava, and he invited these Madhvas to come, and Brahmins, and perform the ritual, and it was very elaborate and very beautiful and very technical, and went on for quite some time. And then after it was over, we picked the deities up and we performed Sankirtan and put them on the altar. And these Brahmins looked at us like, what the heck is that? What are you doing? Like the drum and the jumping and that's all this thing we had. Once I was another occasion in Rishikesh, actually in Lakshmanjula, just above Rishikesh, staying for some time. along the bank of the Ganga, and we were visiting this Satyanarayan temple there, Lakshmi Narayan, and every night, well, one night I should say, we would go and do Sankirtan, and I would give a class of the Bhagavatam with a few devotees that I was with. And one night, some sadhus from the Ramanuja Sampradaya traveling, they came and they stood before the deity and they offered their prayers. That was their kirtan. But it was so nice because when they were performing their kirtan, I heard what Krishna Varnam Tusa Krishnam Sangopangastu Parshadam Yagnai Sankirtana prayer Sudeta Saha Chakva Sudu Chaturip Taraja Lakshmi, so on. All these three nice, beautiful prayers from 11th canto of the Bhagavatam describing Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, because they weren't thinking of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, they had other understanding of it. I'm very happy to Mahaprabhu caused him to say such prayers in our presence. Anyway, the night before we left, the Pujari, who was a young man, he was so attracted to our kirtan, and the way we did it and so forth. And we'd never seen anything like it before. And so he said, can I come with you? Because we were going to go to Vrindavan. And we said, oh, okay, sure, you can come with us. He said, but do I have to change my religion? You seem to have a different, I'm attracted. I don't want to give up my religion, but I like what you're doing. He said, no, you don't have to change your religion. And then in the morning, he got nervous. He stayed, there. He said, it's okay, you can stay. But the point is, he hadn't seen anything like this. Chaitanya Charitamrita, what do we hear? When on the roof of the Jagannath Mandir, when Mahaprabhu's associates were coming from Bengal, remember Sachi sent him to Puri, right? We heard last night, because there'd be commerce and pilgrimage between the two rooms of the same house, Nadia and Jagannath Puri. And so when they came, a whole Shivananda Sain, Advaita Charja, so many great devotees, and they were performing Sankirtan and dancing and exhibiting Sattvika Bhavas. And so the king, Raj Pratapruja, turned to Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, who was there with his brother-in-law, Gopinath, who had been instrumental in converting the Acharya, and before Chaitanya Mahaprabhu really kind of finished the task. He said, what kind of religion is that? He said, I've never seen anything like that. Now, the significance of this is the king of Jagannath Puri. Jagannath is pretty hard to figure out. What is he? Who is he? Buddhists worship him, all different sampradayas. The puja there is conducted by Advaitins. The Govardhan Math of Shankar is there in Jagannath Puri. So he's Jagannath. He's a very generous fellow. And he is worshipped by all types of people who have different conceptions of who he is, who the deities are there. So the point is that the king had seen all kinds of worship. He was from all over Bharat, people had come. But he had never seen anything like this. And Gopinath, I think it was Gopinath, he said, Chaitanya Shrishti. This is the Shrishti, the creation of Chaitanya. It's called Prem Sankirtan. Again, Golokha Prem. The Dhan, the wealth, which is the Prem, Golok has been exported here through the medium of Nam Sankirtan. Very special, right? So when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu took this up, even the Hindus didn't understand what he was doing. They complained to the Qazi and so forth. So to sort out who Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is and locate him and his ecstasy, the ecstasy that he personified on the scriptural map, this was the task of the Goswamis. And it was no simple or small task. It was very extraordinary what they did, which was the standard of the time, of course. The books were the standard of knowledge. They were living in a world view in which there were avatars and devas and so on and so forth. And so they located him on the scriptural map, right? And they said, well, here he is on the map, but what he's talking about is off the map. Mahabhav, what is it? Rasaraj Mahabhav, Duyek Roop. So anyway, they demonstrated all this. They showed all this very extraordinary, and then, in written form. They wrote it in Sanskrit, largely the Goswamis, for educated people, and so on. Common people were taken by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, but now to say he was religious, to say that he's God, and then the Goswamis are taking it further that he's Krishna, and then he's Krishna in pursuit of Radha's bhav. He's Radha and Krishna. It just gets bigger and bigger and deeper as you go in a harder sell, if you will. I mean, okay, you want to glorify something, it's one thing, but how far are you going to go with this? How far are you going to take it, right? And then, so this is an example of what I'm talking. And we're going to make a murti of him also. Remember when we first made the murti of Prabhupada? I have actually the original murti of that was made, this sample, was about this tall, of Prabhupada by Lochan Das, my godbrother at Odarga. But all the other models is the avatari of Prabhupada's, avatar, all the temples, the big sizes and everything. Auntie Dave gave that to me. So anyway, it's a big thing that now they were going to have a murti of him. Of course, he predicted this, or I should say, Vrindavan Das wrote about it. But by that time, it had already happened. And so the point is now, where did that happen? How did that happen? How did we come to the possibility of worshiping the murti of Gaur and Nityananda? And what are the appropriate procedures and so forth? This is something also that, look at it in another way, Pujapad Sridhar Maharaj once said to us, he said that it's not very common. We don't see this. Of course, in Bengal, you will see deities of Gaur Nitai. That's another thing. But within the Gaudiya Sampradaya, he said, for example, Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur did not install Gaur Nitai deities. He installed Radha and Krishna and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu largely everywhere. But Prabhupada, he was saying, that he put the Gaur and Nityananda all over the world. He was making something out of this, right? What was causing him to do that? What was behind that? What sentiment and so forth? And of course, we see that the sentiment behind the manifestation of Gaur and Nityananda Prabhu in murti form, agreeing to accept worship in that form, comes out of Sakya Bhav. And that's where we want to go tonight. To Shriman Gauridas Pandit ki jai, through whom Gaur Nitai manifested himself in murti form, and by whose own statement, in response to something they said to him, they have agreed to enter into every home and every heart. Prabhupada once told us, make little deities of Gaur Nitai, give them to people with some incense, and tell them, wave this incense at them and chant Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. And all your desires will be fulfilled.
Called happy dolls.
Happy dolls, he said. Call them happy dolls.
Yeah.
I mean, to be able to tell Gaur Nitai, this is what I'm going to do with you. Through my 5,000 disciples. I'm going to say, okay. So why they agreed to this, we're going to find out how that came about. They agreed to such a thing, right? And it's, of course, through Gauridas Pandit. So I'm going to speak a little bit about Gauridas, and we read a little bit too from some things I've written in my forthcoming book, dealing with the larger topic of Sakya Rasa, the friendly sentiment. Right? So Gauridas Pandit, he was a Brahmin, and he was the son of the surname of his father was Mishra, like Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Jagannath Mishra, was his father, a common name at that time in Bengal. And he was the Kamsari and Kamala Mishra, his mother and father. He was the fourth of 6 sons, 2 of whom were younger and 3 of whom were older. He was somewhat in the middle. And amongst his older sons was the famous Suryadas, who had 2 beautiful daughters, whose names were Janava and what's her name? Vasudha. And what's the significance of this? Of course, it is that in time, in the context of Gaur Leela, these 2 became the consorts of Nityananda Prabhu, Sri Nityananda Ram Ki Jai, Janava Devi Ki Jai, who latter became very prominent after Nityananda Prabhu's departure in the Sampradaya. One of the famous Vaishnavi gurus in Gaudiya Sampradaya. So Nityananda Prabhu was connected in this way with the family of Gauridas Pandit, and Gauridas was his disciple. Now you may wonder why he was named Gauridas. We'll have to get to that. Because Gauri means Durga. She was consort. This doesn't seem to fit, but it does. We'll see. So, a disciple of Nityananda Prabhu, and one of the famous 12 associates of Krishna and Balaram appearing in Gaur Leela, called Dwadasa, means 12 Gopals, intimate friends of Krishna. And as such, he, Gauridas Pandit, in Gaur Leela is identified with Subal, the most intimate friend of Krishna in the Braj Leela, Subal Saka. And it's a beautiful story of how Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came to collect, if you will, Gauridas Pandit from Shantipur. Gauridas was living in, I think, Shaligram, and he moved to Kalna. And Kalna is just across the Ganga from Shantipur. It's a big river, though. I used to swim across the river every day when I stayed at Shooter Marsh's Moth for 1 month, and I think it was in May. It was one of the hotter months, and every day I would swim across and back. But it's a long, so you'd start here, swim, and the current would take you, and you'd end up over here, and then you have to walk here to come back here at the Moth. So it's a long, haul. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu himself got in a boat with a paddle, an oar, and he paddled himself across the Ganga to Kalna to collect up one of his eternal associates, Gauridas Pandit, right? And when he arrived, he gave Gauridas the oar, along with the handwritten manuscript paddle, along with the handwritten manuscript of the Bhagavad Gita. Now, people will tell this story so many times, and it's just interesting. That's interesting. And the paddle is there in Kalna at Gauridas' ashram, temple, and the Bhagavad Gita is there, manuscript. You can go and see it and so forth. But what does it mean? Of course, Mahaprabhu said, with this oar, I have crossed the river. With this oar, you should bring people across the river of samsara and deliver them. This was what does that mean? How's he going to use the oar to do that? Of course, what it means is that this oar, what does it signify? Mahaprabhu, with his own 2 hands, paddled himself across the river to meet Gauridas. He made effort personally. This is God with his own, 2 hands. He didn't hire a boatman. He came across with the paddle. So it represents the effort that he took to collect up his, one of his eternal associates and give him some service, right? And so, of course, Gauridas was an introverted person, so he wasn't going to go all over the world like or all over Bengal and other parts of India, like some of the other Gopal's, who am I thinking of? Who was close to Prabhupada's family, Udarndatta, very outgoing disposition. But Gauridas, well, he nonetheless, he fulfilled Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's ambition by way of conducting himself as a sadhaka, and putting the effort into sadhana, or he understood you should make some effort like this, and show by your example. Others may see your example, and let that example be grounded in the teachings of Gita Upanishad. Here is some tattva, Gita Upanishad. Bhakti is not just a sentiment, right? It's derived from revelation, its goal, it's the path itself, and so on. Make effort to get grace. This is bhakti. Very different than an effort in jnana or yoga. Make effort to get grace. You just have to weep. But not so easy because the heart is so hard. All you have to do is soften your heart. Oh, that's a very big task, right? So Gauridas, as we see, he set a very extraordinary example. An example in the context of, well, he was introverted. He stayed at home and he worshipped the Vigraha of Gaur Nityananda. Because on another occasion, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Nityananda Prabhu came and gave darshan to him there at his place. And when they decided to leave, to take their leave, he could not bear the thought of their separation. And he was so earnest in his appeal for them to stay that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Nityananda Prabhu, they projected themselves into a nearby neem tree, and said, take the trunk of the neem tree and draw out of there through artisanship, carving our forms and worship them. This is the beginning of this worship of Gaur Nityananda, the whole of Gaudiya Sampradaya. So he did it. And so he had Gaur Nityananda there on the altar, right? Worshipping them. Oh, and his worship was very extraordinary. He was very poor, relatively speaking, but he would imagine decorating his deities with the finest ornaments and jewels, dress, and so forth. And sometimes they would show themselves decorated in the way that he imagined. And then he would look and he asked them, how would you get that stuff? Did you steal it? Especially Dr. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Did you steal that stuff from the neighbors or somewhere? So he would have conversations with them like this. They would show themselves sometimes as Krishna and Balaram. A disciple of mine in Mayapur actually asked me that he had Gauranitai deities. Could he worship them, dress them some days like Krishna and Balaram? Like Gauridas Pandit. But Gauridas Pandit didn't dress them like Krishna and Balaram, but they showed themselves like Krishna, dressed like Krishna and Balaram, and he worshipped them. I said, when I show you like that, you don't have to dress them. That is a Bhava Seva. When you have Bhava, then that kind of Seva can be done. Meanwhile, you worship them as Gaur and Nityananda. And of course, that was the main focus of Gauridas Pandit as well. But on one occasion, and this is significant to this, central to our discussion, on one occasion, they Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in particular expressed to Gauridas Pandit that on another visit, that when you, or the deity spoke to him, when you endeavor so hard in your worship to cooking these elaborate meals and so forth, and it gives us pain to see you make such an effort. And therefore, in our worship, it should be done just very, very simply. We don't require much in this form. So they're giving instructions to him we should take advantage of, right? How they will be worshipped. Let me read a little something here for you in this regard. Although Gauridas was poor, He imagined opulent ornaments for his murtis, as I said. Sometimes they showed up. And although Gauridas cooked opulently for them, on one occasion they told him that the exhausting effort he made to cook for them was not necessary, and indeed it pained them to see their eternal servant labor so on their behalf. At that time, they told him their worship would be complete with merely simple offerings of easily prepared meals, flower garland, simple, that's all. So now, what did Gauridas? How did he respond? That time, Gauridas replied, then why stay here at all? Why stay here at all? You might as well go, the implication is you might as well go anywhere, to anybody's house. They said, okay, that's what we're going to do. We'll go to anybody and everybody's house in this form. And then and we'll agree to be worshipped very simply everywhere. Thank you, Gauridas. Enjoy. Despite this statement that they have agreed, they have gone. Now that doesn't mean we're trying to emphasize how special they are. That they'll be satisfied with just a little. So then we'll think, well, what if I give them a lot? Then that's how we should take these type of directives and statements, right, in Scripture. If you chant in your sleep, the holy name is so powerful. And you think, okay, well, I'll just chant my japa in my sleep. No, you think, well, what to speak then if I chant out loud and I'm awake and I pay attention? That's what these kind of statements are meant to do for us. So you shouldn't abuse the directive here of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to Gauridas Pandit when he asked for simple worship, but at the same time, well, wave that incense and they'll fulfill all your desires, right? Happy dolls. Happy dolls in the hands of Prabhupada. They were happy dolls. And everywhere established, this was, as Sridhar Maharaj said, very extraordinary, different. And of course, he reasoned it's coming out of his Sakya Bhav. This is just one of the evidences that he put forth for his thesis, drawn primarily from Prabhupada's poem, where he expressed that inspiration. And so such was he had a Gauridas very intimate relationship with the deities, and sometimes he would argue with them, as in the case here. And on one occasion, a famous occasion here, he chased them with a stick. He had gone away for some purpose, and the day of Gaur Purnim was approaching, and he didn't have his phone with him, so he couldn't get back to his disciple who was taking care of the deities and say, I'll be back soon, do this and that, Gaur Purnim is coming. So his disciple took the initiative to arrange for a festival and sent out invitations to widely. And when Gauridas then returned before the day of the Purnim, he was quite surprised that you arranged this festival. And he was very upset because he said, you have acted independently. And this is central to material existence. The whole key of bhakti is to follow, right? Anangatya, to follow, to be a follower, not to be independent. So he really emphasized this point. You think, well, it's pretty extreme, right? But it's an important point. I told the story before. I was so pleased one year when I was staying in the Math, Chaitanya Saraswat Math, and I was the only Westerner there. It was, again, in the warmer time of the year. And Madhu Mangal, who was one of Pujapad Sridhar Maharaj's disciples, who had a very beautiful voice and kirtanier, played the mridanga, and he would sing during all the artics. He was blind. And so I asked Madhu if he would take me just, a short distance to the mridanga wall to pick out a really good mridanga, because he was very expert at playing the mridanga. Now we're in Navadvip, Koladvip to be exact, on the bank of the Ganga. And I'm asking a blind disciple of Guru Maharaj, Pujapad Sridhar Maharaj, who's an expert kirtanier, to take me just down the street and pick out a mridanga for a sannyasi. I was a sannyasi. And Madhu Mangal said to me, I have to ask Guru Maharaj's permission. I thought, oh, that was so charming. He's such in the grip of Guru Maharaj that he's blind. I mean, how's he, the idea would maybe he's going to get distracted. I know I only want to go wherever Guru Maharaj tells me to go. I have to get his permission to go, around the corner to get a mridanga, So it was very charming to see that, how he thought of himself. And this is the point that Gauridas is making to his disciple out of affection. And he was very upset with him. And so he told him, you go have your own festival on the bank of the Ganga. You go, kicked him out. And people started to arrive because the invitations had already been sent out, and a wealthy merchant came and gave a big donation. And so he took the donation and he brought it to Gauridas Pandit. And Gauridas said, you keep that for your festival. It's your own festival. So the poor disciple was there hosting the festival, but devotees were arriving and the kirtan was building up and so forth. And Gaur and Nitai on the altar, they heard the kirtan and they felt what was going on over there. When Gauridas wasn't looking, they left. They left the altar. They walked off the altar and went to the kirtan. And when Gauridas came in and saw they're not on the altar, he said, what's going on? And then he was told they went that way. So he went with a stick after the chase after them. Where do you think you're going? Get back here. And as he approached with the stick, they saw him. Gaur Nityananda Chaitanya Mahaprabhu looked at him and entered the heart of his disciple who had organized the festival. And Gauridas then bowed to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in the heart of his disciple and named him, gave him a new name, Hridaya Chaitanya, in whose heart Chaitanya Mahaprabhu resides. Hridaya Chaitanya Prabhu Ki Jai. He was the guru of Shyamananda Pandit, famous Shyamananda Paribar. Right? So they're a special person in our sampradaya, as all of the Dwadasa Gopals are. But this is the way in which Gaur-Nityananda Prabhu, Gaur-Nityananda as murtis, as vigrahas, have come into the world, and they're all over the world now. But we asked a question earlier, and that was, why does he have? How did he have this name, Gauridas? What's the significance? What's the connection there? Not too many people have thought about this, I don't think. But as I said, of course, he's identified with Subal, and Subal is the dearest friend of Krishna in the Braj Leela. He's a Narmasaka, the leading Narmasaka means a Saka whose fraternal love is imbued also with Madhurya, just like yogurt sweetened by honey. So it's intensified. It's a type of friendly love that enables those friends to participate in the romantic affairs of their friend and assist him and his lover in their efforts to meet under the moon and even in the broad sunlight, as we heard this morning. And so we need to go to the Braj Leela then to examine the position of Subal, and we'll cite a particular Leela in this regard, which will help us figure out why he's got the name Gauridas Pandit. Gauridas eventually, of course, he worshipped Gaurnitai in Kalna. His temple is still there. I should mention that after the incident of Hridaya Chaitanya being named and so forth, and the fact that the deities walked off the altar, then Gauridas changed the worship, and he only gave darshan for a short period of time and closed the curtain. If you want to get darshan, you go there for a minute and then the Pujari will close the curtain, like Banki Bihari in Vrindavan. I should mention one other, before we go into the Braj Leela, the famous story, of course, as well. It's very compelling. And that is, as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu started to feel that the need for his own purposes to accept the sannyas order, again, he came with Nityananda Prabhu to Gauridas' place, and Gauridas could sense Mahaprabhu had such things in mind. And so now he was really feeling the kind of one of the early persons to begin to feel the separation that would occur as a result of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu taking sannyas. So he pleaded with him to stay. Previously, he had pleaded, you stay, and they made themselves manifest as murtis for him, right? But now he's pleading even more earnestly, if you will. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Nityananda Prabhu said, all right, well, we'll stay. And they went and stood on the altar, and the deities on the altar walked off and started to leave. So Gauridas said, no, come back. And then Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, well, make up your mind. Make up your mind, right? So this, of course, is a true story, but it's emphasizing to us that the deity is Krishna himself, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu himself. So very famous deities. But eventually Gauridas, in the latter part of his life, this is after the disappearance of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Nityananda from the world, he went to Vrindavan. There he entered Samadhi, and there are some famous deities, his of Radha and Krishna in Vrindavan. So the Madhurya side of his Narmasaka Bhav is played out there in Vrindavan in the worship of Radha and Krishna, and in Navadvip. Yes, the Gauranathana deities. So in Vrindavan, as we say, it was one of the early on when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, in one of his meetings with Gauridas, he told Gauridas, come with me. And he wanted to show him who he was in his leadings. He took him to the Ganga and said, stand in the Ganga, look in the Ganga. And he saw, Gauridas saw his reflection, his beautiful face. Subal has a face. Well, that's another thing. He looked in the Ganga, and then he saw the face of Radha, which is like Subal's, and you could understand that I'm Subal, Subal Saka. He paid the compliment back to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. We heard this morning when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in the midday Leela, for a moment, expressed his anxiety in bhav to Gauridas. I must see Radha. He took him by the hand and said, look here, look in the Ganga. And there Mahaprabhu saw his reflection. You could understand, oh, there is Radha. So the conclusion is, well, as I think I quoted Gorlal Goswami, yes, Gopal in the midst of in the Madhuna Leela. Anyway, Radha Mohan says, oh brother, you know my heart. This is Krishna speaking to Subal in his poem, Radha Mohan. So why do you delay? Please bring her. Show me or I will die. So Mahaprabhu would say things like this on occasion to Gauridas Pandit, right? Taking Prabhu with him, Gauridas steps into the water of the Ganga. Showing Gaur's reflection, Gauridas says, there is your Radha. Gaur then takes that reflection of his own face to be that of Radha. Tears of love flow and his heart becomes happy, Radha Mohan says. But for Gauridas, who else knows the depths of Prabhu's heart? This, of course, echoes the famous amongst us statement of Rupa Goswami in Ujjval Nimani, when he tells us what he says. He says, Kwasriman Adikaritam Nasubala Seva Vido Bindati. What adhikar or eligibility is lacking in Subal? There is no Leela, the time of in terms of the 8 divisions of the Hastakal, he cannot participate in. Rupa Goswami finds him in the Venuharna Leela of Vidagdha Madhava, in the Nishanta Leela, the pre-dawn Leela. In Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, in a verse commented by Prabhupada in his Nectar of Devotion, we find Subal in the Nisha Leela at the night time, when usually the cowherd boys are asleep, right? assisting Krishna there. And Raghunath Das in his Prema Purabda, like the dream of Prem, his stotram there in the first stotram. Oh, he finds Subal in the early evening after Krishna's escaped from his house, and the moon is full, and Krishna begins to feel separation from Radha, and he sends Subal to fetch her in the night, brings her along with Vrinda Devi. They meet halfway. So these are examples of his participation in leelas that typically the cohorts are not present, but this Narma Sakabhav has a role to play there. So Rupa Goswami says, what is lacking in Subal in terms of eligibility? This is Rupa Goswami speaking in the bhav of a gopi, acquainting another newcomer, introducing her to a very important person in all of these affairs in Subal. We should know what is his position. So, therein Rupa Goswami proceeds to describe with exaggeration the intimacy of Radha and Krishna. Just to underscore his point, lying in one another's intimate embrace, Subal fans them, and Sri Rupa writes, should Radha leave in a huff without a cause, as her man or anger and love manifests, Subal manages to pacify her and bring her back. Here Rupa implies, as substantiated elsewhere, no one in all of Braj is more capable of breaking Radha's man and bringing her back to the intimacy of pranay. So pranay is a just short, intimate love, and then it breaks because Radha becomes upset with Krishna over something. And so to intercede and break her man, this is not the easiest task. And sometimes no one else is capable of doing it. And the task is then given to Subal. He's successful. And similarly, also for Radha to escape, if you will, in the daytime and go into the forest where she can rendezvous with Krishna, well, she has an excuse on Sundays. It's the day to worship the sun. And according to her astrological chart, this is an important deva whom she should worship. But then there's every other day. It was Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Well, how would she get out? Sometimes Krishna comes and nearby his mother, her mother-in-law's house, and makes sounds of birds like you've never heard before. What kind of birds are those? And everybody, he's making all these, everybody becomes charmed. And the gopis, Radha and her assistants, easily convinced her, they should take a look and report to her. So there are different ways in which, obviously, that Krishna makes arrangements and with his associates. But there's a famous day, of course, in Gaudiya Sampradaya, and we celebrate it every year. And this is a day in which she couldn't make it. She couldn't find a way out. It was not possible. And none of her associates could navigate the course and make such an arrangement. And so Krishna's feelings of separation were intensified, and he placed his heart before Subal. And this is the famous Subal Vesh, sometimes it's called Leela. And now I'm going to read a description of it for you. It looks at it from the vantage point that mostly is not presented. Mostly the vantage point that the story is presented from is a Madhurya Ras perspective, in which Subal is there, he does something, it's cute, and Radha and Krishna meet. That's what it's about. Radha and Krishna have met. But what is the glory of Subal in all of this? We look at it from that angle, and there we'll find out something about why he's called Gauridas. Okay.
All right.
Gauridas Pandit Ki Jai. Okay. Of course, there's overall, besides his Gauridas' name, Subal himself is a bit of a mystery. We don't find any explanation of who his parents are in Leela, where he resides. Does he reside in Nandagram or in Parsana? These kind of information is available for others. It's a bit of a mystery. There's a clue, though, left, we could say, by Raghunath Das Goswami in his 108 names of Radha, 2 of which are Subal, Nyasta, Sarupya, and Subal Toshita. It means Radha dons she who dons the form of Subal. And Subal Toshita. When his mind is pleased, her mind is pleased. So who is Subal? When in eternity, Radha wants to taste Sakirasa, that is Subal. It's something like a male Kaya Vyuha. Kaya means body, Vyuha means expansion, like all the gopis are Kaya Vyuha Radha. Male Kaya Vyuha, Subal Saka. Important person. He's given Gaurnitai deities to the world. Don't think that worshiping Gaurnitai, you cannot get Radha and Krishna. A friend of mine, a godbrother of mine, had Gaurnitai deities for years. And then a sadhu came through and was preaching about Gopi Bhav and so forth. And this godbrother came to me and said, I have these Gaurnitai deities, and I was thinking of giving them to you. I said, why would you want to do that? He said, well, I want to worship Radha and Krishna, so I want to have Radha and Krishna deities. Oh, I had to advise him that you're making a big mistake here. Right? So don't think that by worshiping Gaurnitai, you cannot get the gift. And in fact, as Nityananda Prabhu himself brought Gopi Bhav to the world by bringing the attention to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. In certain terms, it started the whole sampradaya, right? Bhaja Gauranga, Kaha Gauranga, Laha Gauranga. And he told them, and by doing that, I will be purchased. And people did that without any philosophy or theology. That wasn't written yet. So Vrindavan Das says later on, Nityananda Prabhu gave Gopi Bhav to the world because he gave Mahaprabhu to the world. Right? So one afternoon, then, in the midst of their Vinod Vilas, Krishna pulls Subal Saka aside from the rest of his friends, walking arm in arm with his most intimate friend. Krishna says, Subal, please come close. I want to tell you something from my heart. I have no more intimate friend than you, but seeing your face reminds me of another face that I cannot get out of my mind. Thus, I do not feel happy here anymore. Let the two of us go to the bank of Radhakund and sit there. When we arrive, I will open my heart to you. Of course, I didn't say it, but most of you are aware. Subal looks like Radharani. His hands, his feet, his face looks exactly like Radharani, like a twin, right? Arriving at Radha's lake and beholding the beauty of the forest, Shyam tells Subal that upon seeing the beauty as mine, such beauty as mine cannot rest. He must meet with Radha. However, on this day, no prior arrangement has been made, and Radha is held hostage in her household, as the poet Govindas relates. Then Brinda arrives with a golden champak flower wreath, and she garlands Subal for the pleasure of Krishna. To please Krishna, she garlands Subal. And Subal takes the garland and puts it on Krishna. This is Sakyaras. Sometimes they serve Krishna, sometimes Krishna serves them. This is the equality of Sakyaras. So he takes the champak garland off, puts it on Krishna, and then Krishna passes out. And Subal thinks, what happened? Was there a snake in the garland that bit him? It didn't bite me. And then, of course, he examines Krishna and he realizes, oh, the golden champak garland has served as a further udipana to stimulate his love for Radha, and now he's passed out, pralay, one of the Satvika bhavs. So he takes his cloth and dips it in the Radha Kund, and with a little water refreshes his face, brings him to external consciousness in Vrindavan, whatever that is. Goodness, right? And he understands the situation, right? Thus Subal calls out, so Krishna, but their conversation, Subal, oh Kanai, now I understand why you have fallen and passed out, fallen into a faint, but how can I bring Radha here in the middle of the day? She's not a fruit or a flower that I could just go pick and bring to you, right? She's guarded like it's like a Fort Knox or something like that. There it's guarded by Jatila and sister-in-law and so forth. Govinda says, whatever you say, Subal, I can't live without Radha. Subal, you're asking me for something supernatural. I hope you realize that. Now, of course, some people say that you're God, and sometimes you agree with them. So maybe you are. And if so, you're going to have to give me that kind of supernatural power to do this miraculous thing of nobody else is able to do on this day. And she's got so many intimate associates, and they're not successful. I'm going to need your power. Krishna says, so be it. Govinda says, Subal, brother, by your grace, I will bring her. So he's at great risk. It's a great risk, right? What he's doing. Subal's very popular. Everybody loves Subal. So his reputation is at stake here. He should be found out, right? But he's willing to take that risk. Thus, Subal finds Krishna in emotionally troubled romantic waters and assures him that, as his friend, he's sailing right behind him and prepared to lay down his body like a bridge to bring him to the shore and ease his troubled mind. Indeed, Krishna is desperate in that his longing for Radha has overwhelmed him, and it has not been possible for Radha's Sakis to free her from the confines of her household. Thus, Krishna appeals to Subal to somehow bring Radha to her Kund. Despite the formidable challenge this presents to Subal, he has no alternative other than to miraculously make this happen. So here, the tenderness of Krishna's love for Subal is palpable. He reveals his mind to him in confidence. The significance of Subal's role and Krishna's romanticism is also underscored. And here, Krishna burdens him with the task that Radha and all of her Sakis together cannot accomplish, despite Radha's extreme condition being comparable to Krishna's intense longing for her. As Subal heads to Yavat, he takes shelter of Nam Kirtan, singing his favorite names of Krishna. He thinks that if Krishna is God, well, there's more power in his name than him. We learned that from Nanda Maharaj. That's a whole other Leela. Our boys learned from Nanda why it's auspicious to name your son after God. Because there's a story in the Bhagavad Purana of the Brahmin who did this, named his son Narayan, and so forth. So we've all learned from Nanda Maharaj, good teacher. So he, by the power of Harinam, he thinks he'll be successful, when in fact, Krishna's necessity is the mother of Subal's invention. First of all, he requires an excuse for showing up at Yavat. So he returns to the herd and collects Krishna's favorite newborn calf, who's just old enough to walk, but small enough, young enough to carry also. So carrying the calf, he comes close, and just outside of the entrance where he cannot be seen yet, he takes the calf and tells the calf, "What this is the secret I want you to do. Enter in there," and twists her tail, shoos her in, and so she's going to run in through the gate into the compound of Radha's mother-in-law, where she's imprisoned, right? And then he thinks, well, I'll go after the calf, and I'm there to pick up the calf, and somehow, well, see what happens from there. He'll figure out how to spring Radha from jail, right? So then as Subal nears the gate, Jatila hears him singing. Despite her apparent dislike for Krishna, she finds some charm in Subal's fraternal love for him, even while thinking he could have made a better choice of friends. In Krishna Lila, everyone without exception loves Subal. When Jatila sees him, she affectionately asks what he's doing here. But her presence does not make things easier for Subal, who by now has come up with a plan of action that involves getting Jatila, but getting by has to come up with a plan to get by Jatila and into her compound where Radha's residence is located without raising suspicion. You didn't think he would run right into her, right at the gate practically, right? Where she's collecting cow dung, making cow dung patties and so forth. So thus Subal replies that he's looking for a particular spunky calf dear to his friend that got separated from the herd. And at the same time, he expresses his fatigue and thirst as a result of his effort to retrieve the heifer. Jatila, of course, has seen the calf pass through the gate and tells Subal that she will bring him a glass of fresh cool water, which is not what Subal wanted to hear. Subal then tells Jatila that recently he was afflicted by a serious illness. And as a remedy, he must worship the goddess Gauri, Durga, right? From whom he received the cure, which includes vowing not to accept water from the hand of a widow. Jatila's widow. Here, Subal's mind shifts from thinking only of Krishna to thinking only of Radha. In his effort to unite them, Gauri, another name for Durga, is the world god from whom it is difficult, Dur, to go, God. But Durga is also a name for Radha, who's difficult to go to. Right? Subal's serious disease is, of course, the partial influence of Krishna's contagious fever for Radha. Alas, Jatila replies, the calf is within the compound. Then, however, with some suspicion, she says, but I've never heard of such a vow. And you have become a devotee of the goddess? Can you sing a song in praise of her? Oh. Jatila's unexpected request catches Subal off guard, thinking of the goddess Radha as his only shelter. He manages to spontaneously compose and recite thus. O goddess, I know only Kanu, his Venu, and his Denu. What can I know about you? Yet tears from my eyes pour forth for you like the jal of the Jamuna. My heart is your temple. Please reside there. This is a prayer to Radha, right? Coming from his heart. But it's disguised as a prayer to the goddess Gauri or Durga. And Jatila's impressed. Hearing the prayer and poetry, Jatila's impressed. So she tells him that he can get a glass of water inside from her daughter-in-law, who is in her quarters, suggesting that he avoid not only herself, he can get a glass of water inside, from her daughter-in-law, who is in her quarters. That's Radha, suggesting that he avoid not only herself, but also her daughter, Putila, as a measure of extra caution and consideration of his vow. So he's now got Jatila's permission to ignore or avoid Kutila and go straight to her daughter-in-law, Radha. So Jatila also suggests Subal rest a bit before collecting the calf, who by now is most likely suckling the teats of Radha's nurse cow, Bahula, and bonding with Radha's calf, Tungi. And then she closes the gate. Now, 1/3 of Subal's mission has been accomplished. He's entered the compound. He's now approaching the quarters of Radha. There's 2/3 more that he has to accomplish, right? Radha sees Subal, she's overjoyed. The poet Dinabandhu Das describes their meeting and exchange of words. Radha, my dear Subal, what a surprise to see you. Tell me, what is your Pran Saka doing? Hearing his flute and his Saka's buffalo bugles, I become stunned thinking of the hardships he faces in the forest. God forsaken, I cannot go there. Thus I cry, but light a fire to pretend my tears come from the kitchen smoke. If only I had the fortune to be a Saka. To attain such a blessing, I would drown myself in an ocean, for then I could always see Krishna. Subal, listen, Vinodini, I have come to take you to Krishna, who has fallen unconscious at your lake and thought of you. Here, put on my clothes and give me yours. Then go there, and I will wear your clothes and stay here. Seeing you, our Shamasundar will regain his life. Thus, the two lookalikes change clothing. Radha puts on her jewelry on Subal, and Subal ties her hair in a top knot, while Radha in turn ties Subal's hair in a braid. However, Radha presents a problem. Her breasts give her away. Subal has the answer, right? Subal has already thought of the solution to this problem in advance. He tells Radha to collect Krishna's calf in her arms, and this way hide her breasts. Radha is amazed at how clever and well thought out Subal is. Calf in her arms, she prepares to depart, her left foot forward, but Subal stops her and informs her that cowherds always depart leading with their right foot. Unquestioning, at this point, she steps into her robe and heads for the gate, her head down, looking at the calf on the ground and the ground below. Just ahead stands Jatila, who's fooled by Radha's disguise, thinking that she is Subal. Jatila wishes her, a safe journey, returning to the herd. Radha then dances her way into the forest. She's overjoyed at the prospect of meeting Shyam at her lake, as she also amuses herself pretending to be a gopa, something she has wished for previously on more than one occasion. However, seeing her dressed as Subal, Krishna thinks his friend has returned without her. Just see how well she plays her role and how much the two, Radha and Subal, resemble one another. Here, Biyar Dev Goswami envisions Radha Govinda's conversation. Krishna, oh Subal, you have come back without Radharani. Couldn't you bring her here? Radharani, in the dress of Subal, joking, says, no, it was not possible for me to bring her in the daytime. Krishna, then what am I to do? I can't tolerate my life any longer. Radharani, if you say so, I could bring Chandravali instead. Krishna, no. Curd cannot satisfy the thirst for milk. It is not possible. Radharani, embracing Krishna, can't you recognize your maidservant? You fail to recognize me. Thus, 2/3 of Subal's mission, its centerpiece, is completed. Radha and Krishna are united in broad daylight. Gyandas relishes this scene and in his song, along with his song, along with the assembled devotees. On the left of the adolescent boy stands a fresh teenage girl. Gyandas begs for the shelter of their feet. From all sides, the Vaishnavas clap their hands, seeing the couple Radha and Krishna, they chant Hari, Hari. Then Radha explains to a somewhat confused lover how she got there and why she is dressed as Subal. Hearing her explanation, Krishna's heart swells with fraternal love for Subal. He did it. How did he do it? Right? But he also expresses concern for him. How will Subal escape and Radha return? Mission is not fully accomplished yet. But in great risk to himself, Subal busies himself performing the duties of Radha, lighting a fire, cooking, cleaning the floors with cow dung, and so on, just as if he were Radha himself. And he is very convincing. Jatila is not the least bit suspicious. Thus, when Subal asks her permission to take a jug and retrieve water from the Jamuna, Jatila grants it. Deceiving Jatila in this way, Subal makes a beeline for the forest, his eyes roaming cautiously in all directions. Dinabandhu Das says, oh, when will I receive the dust of Subal's feet as he completes his mission? Subal arrives at Radha's Kund, dressed in her attire and smiling, bearing a jug of water, and water jug on his hip. And seeing him, Krishna also smiles broadly, and Radha shyly lowers her head. Krishna then listens attentively with great amusement to Subal's description of his mission, amazed at Subal's cleverness and devotion. But Time is of the essence, and Jatila will become suspicious should Radha not return soon. Well aware of this, Subal tells Radha to change clothes with him again. Then Radha takes the water pot and returns to Yavat. So, how privileged are we to learn this secret, intimate Leela from the hearts of the Rasika Bhaktas, and how it is so appropriate that in Gaur Leela, Subal is named Goridas Pandit. Goridas Pandit ki jai, Gaur Nityananda ki jai, Gaur Premanand. What was the time?
7:24.
Okay, so we'll stop there. We'll get together again in the morning. You had a question? Okay.
So we hear that, when we reach higher stages of devotional service and Raganuga Bhakti, it's mandated we have to follow a Brijvasi. So how about, can we just worship Lord Chaitanya? And is it the same process that we follow an associate of Lord Chaitanya? Or
Well, when we follow Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, then we want to follow the teachings that he imparted to Rupa and Sanatan, that in which we find that teaching, right? Raga Bhakti means, well, there are those who are embodiments of that Raga Bhakti, fully manifest, and that ideal that we are attracted to, then we want to follow that, right? And so there are examples. This is just kind of the broad idea. With regard to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's Leela, then we are already in the extended form of Gaur Leela through Guru Parampara. Our Guru is an associate of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He's bringing the Sankirtan and so forth, right? And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is like the leader, and Nityananda, they're the macrocosmic gurus, and our Guru is a microcosmic manifestation of them. They are the swasti, samasti gurus, right? So we worship Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in Dasyabhav, through Sankirtan. And if you are looking for like an alternative course, right? For example, yes, you could take an alternative route. It would be that you will follow the example of Prabhupada and associates of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu himself, Nityananda Prabhu, and aspire to enter into Gaur Leela. And then in the Kirtan, in Trivasangam, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu will give you a Braja Leela Swarup as well. Now, that's a way of talking about it, but I think that the emphasis should be, as we underscored yesterday, that the way is Nam Sankirtan. Through Nam Kirtan, singing the names of Krishna, then all these, the path, the internal path, this will be made known. What does Krishna say in the Gita? Hesham satati yuktanam vajatam pritipurvakam dadami buddhi yogam tam enamam upayantite. So in our particular parivar, this is the emphasis, that there are other aspects of bhakti in higher stages, Rag Bhakti that you're referring to. Some paribars like to teach about that and try to incorporate that into early stages of practice and so on and so forth. And one of the points we made last night is that sometimes we see in that situation that it results at times in a departure from or a lack of appreciation, understanding for Nam Sankirtan itself, relegating it to something external. The real practice is is smarnam, and you have to be engaged in this, and so this is a problem and this is a problem that was perceived by Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur and Bhakti Vinod, who emphasized in no uncertain terms kirtan, and in terms of its efficacy to reveal all such practices, ways, if you will, further instructions in due course. And the Guru may also tell us so many things, but to put emphasis on the practice of Nam, and I think that should be your focus and concentration.
So could you say that smaranam in an immature stage, it's more like imagination, not really smaranam?
Well, Bhaktisiddhanta's opinion was kirtana prabhavi, smarana svabhavi, where the power of kirtan meditation will come about. Now, there are types of meditation that you can do in early stages. So there are different degrees of smaranam. There's what pratyahara, dharana, dhyan, samadhi, dhruvanusmriti, samadhi. So you can't just sit down and do samadhi, right? Or dhruvanusmriti. You can't even sit down and do dhyan. If you cannot focus on the name without the mind going anywhere else, how will you meditate on the pastimes without the mind going? When the name is underscored for having the power to reveal the pastimes. And the name is more generous than the form of the Lord, and merciful and so forth. So that what we can do pratyahara, dharana. Pratyahara means this is the form of smarnam. You can practice to withdraw your mind from other things. Practice that. And to concentrate. So you may concentrate on the teaching, even, for example, or just try to concentrate on the name, as we were speaking last night. So these are forms of smarnam that can accompany nam, kirtan, or japa of nam. And that will foster then the adhikar, the eligibility, the capability to enter into, to do actual dhyan effectively, and dhruvanusmriti, smarana, samadhi. So you can't, like I said, you can't just sit down and let's do samadhi. It doesn't work like that, right? So unfortunately, yes, it was the experience of Bhakti Vinod and of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur that many people were doing that and neglecting comparatively. You see what is the emphasis on Sankirtan from Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur and our Guru Maharaj Prabhupada, that it just took us all over the world. That's a pretty considerable focus and concentration on that, right? It was very, very successful, all things said. Bhakti Vinod Thakur himself warned, and Bhaktisiddhanta echoed that artificially trying to enter into stages of bhakti that one doesn't have eligibility for will become ugly. It will become, Bhaktisiddhanta used to quote from Bhagavatam that the true beauty was his translation verse from 11th canto. I forget the sloka, but true beauty is knowing who you are, knowing your adhikar. When you act out of adhikar, if a guru is sitting with close associates who know him and you're a new bhakti, you come and say, "Hey, Gurudev, how's it going? I'm gonna give you a hug. Know who you are. Take your place here." It becomes, it's unbecoming, right? Just to give an example. So if you know who you are, you understand your adhikar, and you apply yourself sincerely accordingly, well, then you're in the best position to make progress. But if you artificially try to apply yourself to practices that you don't have the qualification for, there's no qualification required for chanting, but for smarnam, there is qualification. It's the whole teaching of the Bhagavad Gita. Mityatara Suchite. Mityatara Suchite. So don't be, don't sit and pretend to meditate. He says, do nishkam karma. This is your trajectory. You're active. Continue the active trajectory and practice giving up the fruits. That'll be, you'll be an honest person that way, instead of sitting down to meditate and you look like you're meditating, but your mind is on something else. Like there was one Naga Baba, naked, Naga Baba in Vrindavan one year, I remember walking the streets, and Vrindaranya, my disciple, was there, blonde girl, He saw her and chased after her. So, shouldn't be like that, right? So they warned Bhaktisiddhanta, they were experiencing it. Bhakti, they're experiencing this kind of thing in Gaudiya Sampradaya, and it wasn't giving Gaudiya Sampradaya a good name. And it wasn't good for those, who were doing so. So they emphasized in no uncertain terms the efficacy of kirtan, and that said, even in a dynamic way, the whole idea of Brihat Mridanga and so forth, just to keep people busy, occupy everybody. I mean, think about it now. Here's your task. You got to go now, sit in a jungle and meditate on Krishna all day long. That'd be difficult to do. Now, I'll give you another thing difficult, but you can try it at least. Try to explain all the things that I said tonight in your own words, if somebody doesn't know anything about Krishna. When the opportunity arises, they say, what are you wearing those beads for? What's that all about? Well, that's quite a challenge, but it's more feasible than going in terms of a way to control your mind, right? Than to go and sit in a jungle and just meditate on Krishna, right? So this was their emphasis, and it had good results. Therefore, the best members of all the paribars are ex-ISKCON people. Who didn't have the spiritual intelligence to follow their bliss. They went against their own bliss. They had bliss. As soon as I got bliss, I said, no, I know I'm on the right path. My mantra works. My guru is perfect. No problem. That's not coming from me. So whatever your thoughts are, it's another thing. But by my experience, I'm not going to. I'm going by that, and it conforms with what the texts say, and so on and so forth, right? Yeah. So yeah, some people are a little bit intelligent, and we found this happen sometimes. And this is relative to what the topic here, but they heard some ideas. There were paramparas not born about. You didn't get this Siddha Pranali. And verse says this, and Chaitanya Charitamrita says this, and Raghavat Chandrika says this. And you never heard that book, did you? Yeah, in this book, and so forth. And problem. Well, if you to agree with the problem is to go against your own bliss, right? And your intelligence now is becoming deviated and carrying you. And yeah, Gurudev didn't teach me that, didn't give that teaching. And so look at it's right here in the book, right? It says this should be done. We don't ignore all those texts. We have an explanation of all those things, and so forth. And it doesn't result. Our explanation doesn't result in people sitting down and in a way that Gaudiya Vaishnavism would never be known in the world. It would not be known. Nityananda Prabhu empowered Prabhupada to make it known. And in all those unknown quarters, the world, we know about them, or some or some devotees know in our paribar know about them because some member of our paribar got confused and went there and became the best disciple there, because all the best disciples come from Gaudiya Math and ISKCON. So when they get to this, they go, but we should publish the books, and do something with this, just don't just sit there and we'll, take it around, and that's what We do. That's the characteristic of our party, and that means Krishna Shakti Vine Nahi Tar Pravartan. Nam Sankirtan cannot be successfully propagated without Krishna Shakti. So if you don't think that Prabhupada had love of Krishna, you don't know. You're like insane, right? I mean, nobody could credibly make that argument anywhere. Right? I heard someone say that, yes, yeah, in 1960, I think it was 1965, somebody, fulfilled Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's prophecy to bring the holy name everywhere. Somebody did that. But the real thing now, Rag Bhakti, that will come from here. He's talking to somebody from ISKCON or Gaudiya Math who left and is there now. Some handful of people. And that fool believes that. Yeah. I mean, I tell you, I spend a lot of time in this. You have too. But, I've been around the block, met a lot of people. I met people who after Prabhupada's departure were called Siddhababas, who I saw next to Prabhupada. They were like mosquitoes next to an eagle. Seriously, and I don't mean to criticize them, but that's just who they were, and it was so apparent. And now all of a sudden they're Siddhapurusha Baba, and we should leave Prabhupada to go and get initiation. So I've been around the block here. I thought about these things in every way, from every angle. I tend to like to support our group on Pra. And what they have prescribed, the method to attain the goal, which is Rag Bhakti, Gopi Bhav, Gopa Bhav, and so forth, is perfect. So, yeah, follow that. Be peaceful. Be peaceful. Everything will come. Long answer. So it's something I wanted to address a little bit tomorrow. We're going to talk a little bit about our group from Pra, so I may have to repeat myself a little bit, but it's important. And Gauri Das Pandit ki jai.
Jai.
Or Premanandi.
Hari.
Bhaktivedanta Tripurari Maharaj, Srila Guru Maharaj, ki jai.
Jai.